Well, good evening and welcome to Carnegie Town Hall. I'll call to order this regular meeting of the City Planning Commission. Happy to have folks here in the audience on a beautiful day, and for anybody watching at home, we're happy you're joining us too. First, we're kind of excited. This is the first month with the new Shaped Places Ordinance in effect. So fun to be into the 21st century as we're looking at planning and zoning in Sioux Falls. I want to say congrats to Jeff and Sam and the whole staff in the planning office for putting together an ordinance that could pass with such a high percentage of the vote. So we're excited to be working with Shaped Places and continuing the fun planning in Sioux Falls. First item that we're going to talk about today is for the last, 6, 8, maybe even 9 months, we've been recognizing past projects that have gone above and beyond. And I'll let Commissioner Dunlap kind of take over that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Nick said, we started this some time ago. We like to talk about projects that we've previously approved where we feel that the petitioner has went above and beyond minimum standards as far as the project. Tonight's it's my privilege to talk about Sanford Children's Hospital. Sanford Health worked with local landscape architect Confluence to design a dedicated permanent open space at the corner of its large medical campus in Sioux Falls. The Children's Hospital and Garden sits on approximately 5 acres of land. The formal landscape arrangement complements the castle architectural theme of the building while open lawn areas are used as event space. Sidewalks create a children's maze at one space, while a water feature creates a backdrop for a larger-than-life-size bronze sculpture of the donor and children. The 179,000-square-foot, 5-story children's hospital was designed for a 146-bed facility to replace the medical center's existing pediatric unit. The client's vision was of a castle of care, which would be a unique building, something that could project strength, hope, healing, and endurance. The design features playful public spaces, family-oriented patient rooms, inpatient and outpatient clinics, child life and teen rooms, and a chapel. It's a vibrant, colorful world where sick and injured children find inspiration, imagination, and play to be as important to healing as Sanford's leading technology, breakthrough research, and advanced medicine. Thank you.
I think we should give them a round of applause. Thank you, Kenny. Now we'll move on to approve the consent and regular agenda items. To put non-controversial items on the Commission's consent agenda, we approve them all at once. I'll have first Denise, if you wouldn't mind reading the consent agenda, please.
Item 1 is the approval of the April 2nd, 2014 minutes of the regular meeting. Item 2 is plats. Item 3 is a 2014-0402 rezone from the RA1 apartment residential low density to the RD1 townhomes duplex residential suburban CN conservation located at the northwest corner of West 12th Street and North Ellis Road. Item 4. 2014-0403 rezone from the RS single-family residential suburban to the CN conservation at West 85th Street and South Pinewood Avenue. Item 5. 2014-0405 rezone from the C4 commercial regional to the I1 light industrial at the northwest corner of West 54th Street North and North Northview Avenue. Item 6. 2014-0406 rezone from the RS single-family residential suburban CN conservation to the RA3 apartment residential high density at East 69th Street and Southeastern Avenue.
Thank you, Denise. First, staff, are there any changes to the consent agenda other than having a request to move item 5 to the regular agenda? Was there any member in the audience that wanted to move one of these item number 5, right, guys? Which, yep, we'll make sure we move that one to the regular agenda. Anybody else want to move a consent item to the regular agenda? Any planning commission members care to do one of those things?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with item number 5 moved to the regular agenda.
Second.
Okay, should we do that as approve the regular agenda and then amend with moving item 5?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
The consent.
All right, motion and a second. Does somebody want to make that amendment?
I'll amend the motion to move item number 5 to the regular agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second on the agenda, on the amendment to the agenda. All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. The amendment passes. Now we'll move on to the approving the consent agenda with item number 5 moved to the regular agenda. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes. So if you're here for one of the items on the consent agenda, you're free to go. If not, if you don't want to, you can sure stay and watch, but it is a beautiful day outside. With that, we would look for approval of the regular agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Do we need to amend this one?
We do.
Yes, it also hasn't been read, though, yet into the record, so do you want to, you can either withdraw it now, or let me just double check, or wait until the item to withdraw it. Once it's read, Fifely.
Do you have a record?
Read it after they approve.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the regular agenda. Then we would need an amendment to add item 5 and withdraw item 7.
Item 5 is already
And so just an amendment to withdraw item 7.
to withdraw item 7.
Somebody like to make that amendment?
I will move that amendment.
And I will second.
So we have a motion and a second to amend the regular agenda by withdrawing item 7. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. The amendment passes. Now we will approve the regular agenda as amended. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. Regular agenda is approved. If you were here for item 7, that item has been withdrawn. Again, free to stay around, but you don't have to. With that, we'll move on.
Item 5 is a 2014-0405 rezone from the C4 Commercial Regional to the I-1 Light Industrial at the northwest corner of West 54th Street North and North Northview Avenue.
Thank you, Denise.
Good evening, Diane DeCoyer with the Planning Office. The project before you is a request to rezone 19.84 acres from the C4 Commercial Regional District to the I-1 Light Industrial District. The owner intends to provide manufacturing, distribution, and warehouse use. The applicant is Mark Mickelson from Jansmick Land Investment. The property is located at the northwest corner of West 54th Street and North Northview Avenue, east of Louise Avenue and Interstate 29. Under the 1983 zoning ordinance, this property was zoned C4, Planned Business District, which allowed for retail, general merchandise, and light commercial uses, including a retail warehouse of unlimited size. Under Shape Places, the property is currently zoned C4, Commercial Regional, which allows for retail, office, and public service facility of unlimited size. The applicant is proposing to rezone to I-1 Light Manufacturing, which allows offices, warehouse, and supporting retail also of unlimited size. Since this property is located adjacent to residential to the west, a level C buffer yard is required, which would include a 30-foot buffer yard with a 4-foot high berm and 40 units of landscaping for each 100 lineal feet. Because the subject application is consistent with the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan, staff recommends approval of the rezone. Because this is a rezone application, rezoning shall be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Rezoning approvals or denials are ordinances and will be sent forward to City Council for a first reading and a public hearing. I can answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions for Diane?
Diane, could you put the overhead map on? It says that we've got to the north C4, to the south C4, to the east and west is currently zoned I-1.
Correct.
So right would be, as I'm looking at this map, would that be west or would that be east?
To the west there, the area between the C4 that's circled, and then where it says Louise Avenue, that is the residential property, and it is not annexed into the city.
That's residential.
Correct.
So it's not and that's to the east or is that to the west?
West.
So it's not I-1 to the west.
I-1 is to the east. And to the west on the other side of the interstate there. We don't have that included on that zoning map.
Okay, thank you.
Diane, you talked about a level C buffer yard. So this is one of the new fun parts about the new zoning ordinance is that it includes,
Right.
if you have these, industrial next to a residential, these are the requirements that are now made that have to be met for the applicant, correct?
Correct. And things like the buffer yard up against residential are to protect the residential from any development that would be happening adjacent to it.
And I think you went over this in the staff report, but just refresh me on what that buffer yard is, how many feet, and includes what again?
It would be a 30-foot buffer yard.
Okay.
And it would also require a 4-foot-high berm with landscaping. There's certain landscaping elements that are required with that. There's another option that if they've got parking that encroaches or can encroach on part of that buffer yard by about 5 feet, they could also do a 2-foot-high berm with a 4-foot-high fence. So there's some alternates there if the applicant desires.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Diane, help me here with what can the petitioner do with this property under I-1 that he can't do under C4?
As I stated, with Shape Places C4, they can do retail, they can do office and public service facility of unlimited size. But with with light industrial, they can do manufacturing, they can do office, and they can also do some supporting retail. But it's really that warehouse element that allows them in light industrial.
So C4 would allow a building of any size?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Diane. Is the applicant here? Yes. You would please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mark Mickelson, 2901 South 5th Avenue, Sioux Falls.
Anything you wanted to add, Mark?
Dale Jans, who's in the audience, and I are partners on this land, and there's a fair amount of land in the neighborhood that we bought and have been developing actually for about 10 years. This subject property is about 19 acres in size, and we bought that, I think it was 2007, and then we annexed it into the city. We built Northview Avenue that runs immediately to the east, was part of our motivation for buying it because we owned the property on the other side of the street. And at that point in time, we decided, we sat down and we made a zoning decision on what to zone things, and we were kind of on the fence on this particular parcel, whether it was I-1 or commercial. And at that point in time, we went with C4. We just thought it was a more difficult zoning designation to get. And our development philosophy out there has been we'll kind of see what the market needs and we'll try to supply that. And so the property to the north that's C2, we sold that to Stan's Camper. To the east, which is to the right, I don't know if you're familiar out there, but there's an Army Corps Reserve training facility out there. There's a Beatty Forsyth, which is an HVAC warehouse distribution facility, and then a Sherwin-Williams, a paint shop, which are all I-1 uses. And then to the south of this is currently, right there is currently zone C4. And honestly, in our marketing materials, we've displayed that. We're not sure what the use is going to end up being. It just kind of depends what needs come along. Ultimately, we do think that the corner will end up being commercial, but there's just a lot more interest in light industrial land, and frankly, the community is a little bit short on that kind of land. So, and Dale was reminding me on the way over, our development philosophy has been to kind of make sure we put good users in with good buildings, because we continue to own the property that neighbors this, and that's pretty evident. Cimarron labels out there, P&M Steel, Animal Health, all good buildings, and they all have good appearance. So we'll be a conscientious developer if we can move forward on this.
Thank you, Mark. Did anybody have any questions for Mark?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. Ken?
Mark, do you have something in mind for this property? Or is this just marketing at this particular
No,
point?
we have an inquiry. It isn't to the purchase agreement phase, but it's a light manufacture and distribution. It's currently in town and has been looking for a place to expand for a few years, and has settled on this on a portion of this piece of land.
I asked, there might be a neighbor or two here that might wonder what's going on. A lot of times we encourage a neighborhood meeting if there's something specific that maybe can sometimes answer questions neighbors might or might not have. But at this point, you don't have anything concrete one way or the other.
I'll leave it to Dale if he wants to talk about it, because he's been working directly with the user, but it's something that we hope comes together. And he and I have looked at each other. We've got 60 acres of commercial land out there, and maybe on this side of Westport, say 35 industrial acres. We've sold 40 industrial acres and no commercial since we've been there, and so I just see this as being, where the need is for the community, and it's an appropriate use. I think this isn't a heavy industrial request.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience want to comment on item 5? Please come on up, sir.
My name is Cody Weemy. Do I need to state my address?
Please.
No.
4410 North Louise Avenue, Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Okay.
I'm not as good a speaker as Mark, so I'll apologize for that up front. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak and be heard in sessions such as these. I'm representing a small group of homeowners that are here with me tonight that border the property described above me here as item agenda number 5, which pertains to the 19.8 acre land in northwest Sioux Falls. Again, the application's been submitted for it to be rezoned, and I speak for my group as a whole when we have an interest in this proposed rezoning. This has kind of been brought up already, but I would like to direct your attention to the documentation that the staff put together for this, the staff report for the proposed rezoning. There's a few areas that I'm concerned with. They've been touched on a little bit by Ken. He noticed the same thing that I did. To the north and south, the properties are currently zoned as commercial and vacant. Thank you. Those are both correct. To the east, it's listed as occupied light industrial. And as Mark stated, that is the military reserve complex. From my research, and I very well could be wrong, but I believe it's technically supposed to be institutional property, such as a church or something of that nature. And then finally to the west, which is where my family and I and my neighbors live, it's listed on the docket there as light industrial property that is vacant. And this is completely false. Not only are the adjoining properties to the west not industrial at all, but there are 3 single-family residential properties, and they have not been vacant once in the last 25 years. So by my account, the property should be listed as follows: commercial, commercial, institutional, and residential. So I plead to you, the committee, to further investigate who identified the properties as a level 5 compatibility scale when they came to the conclusion of 3 or 4 of the boundary properties that are zoned similarly to what is being proposed by JANSMIC. In addition, the report goes on to tout the proposal's rezoning compatibility by making a quote to page 59 of the Shaping Sioux Falls 2035 document. Page 59 of that document speaks nothing to light industrial zoning, nor does it speak about the compatibility of said properties. I believe that to be an error as well. I feel at this point there's been no investigative research done by the compiler of the data, as it's also listed in Lincoln County. This is false. I consider these inaccuracies to be negligent, and I'm requesting that the rezoning application be either denied or deferred to a later date on the grounds that it's falsely represented to you guys, the committee.
Cody, just for some information for you, we had a briefing yesterday where they presented an updated report that included the single family and the 3 compatibility rating.
I downloaded this off of the city's website 20 minutes before I got here today, and it was not corrected.
Okay, the one we got yesterday was. I have it right here.
I apologize, I did not get that.
That's fine.
Furthermore, my family and I have lived on the connecting properties to the west of the land in question for over 25 years. In those years, much to the credit of the people that are before me, the landscape of Sioux Falls has changed immensely for the better. My father and I, along with our longtime neighbors, have been able to watch all this growth happen from our backyard. We have a bright view from high atop a little hill in northwest corner of Sioux Falls that we call home. A view that is threatened to be taken from us with the approval of this proposal. In addition to the visual intrusion that this proposal will no doubt bring, along with its compromising of our peace and privacy that we originally purchased the property for over 25 years ago, the approval of this rezoning will also thrust upon us a unique financial hardship that all 3 of our homes stand to lose significant value and sellability in the marketplace. I can provide a comprehensive list of realtors and investors familiar with our city's history and landscape that will attest to my claims if requested. I'd also like to state that the view that we lose from this is not only because of the building that is attempted to be put in place, but also any buffer zones would block said view as well. My claims are factual not only to the loss of view that we currently enjoy, but also negatively impacting our ways of life with increased traffic, parking lots, potential for crime, noise and smell from production, and potential water contamination that comes with manufacturing facilities and distribution warehouses. All 3 of our family's homes utilize well water, and the Water Source Protection Act of 1990 requires a full analysis anytime a zoning change is put into effect that could alter drainage landscapes. Considering whoever wrote the Planning Commission staff report that I have a copy of did not recognize residential housings, I'm sure no such source study has been conducted. In closing, I would again like to thank you for your time, and I would urge the City Planning Commission to decline or defer this proposal rezoning until proper investigative research can be done as it pertains to not only the health and safety of our families, but also the fairness to the investments that we've made to our long-standing homes. While I would never try to tell another man what he can or cannot do with his land, I do have a say when it clearly negatively impacts me. We were there first, and in fairness, that must be taken into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Cody. Did anybody have any questions for Cody?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, Ken.
Cody, you are a good speaker. You're not that. You did a very nice job.
I'm a good reader, Ken.
Cody, what do you envision here? I mean, we've got C4 zoning that can accommodate an awful lot of things, buildings of a lot. There isn't a limit to the size. The property is going to develop. You know, it's kind of a question of when.
I understand that.
We're kind of there.
We are.
You know, losing your view is something that it's kind of hard for us to kind of grab a hold of.
You need to come have steak at my place.
Would you feel more comfortable if you knew what was going there? Would the neighborhood feel more comfortable if they knew what was going in there?
I think we would, but from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but no one in our neighborhood, quote unquote, has been contacted with any future plans.
How long has it been C4? And maybe you would know or maybe wouldn't know that.
I do not have an answer to that.
Some point or other that had to have happened.
There's, from my knowledge, and I'm 31 years old, I've been there for 26 years, that has been a cornfield and alternating hayfield.
I think Mark mentioned that in 2006 or 2007 it was C4, so it's been that way for a while.
And so you weren't aware of it in 2006 that there was zoning being taken place on that ground and ground around it?
I apologize, I was not saying that there was any wrongdoing there at all, but I was not aware of it. It very well may have been posted and done properly, but I wasn't aware of it.
We're feeling our way a little bit with this new shape Sioux Falls. I'm not sure, how everybody might or might not think about it. Your home has been there, that's been residential, you're not part of the city.
That's correct.
And the homes have been there for, how old is your
The
house?
home that I currently reside in was built in 1986. My father built it. I purchased it from him. And he actually purchased the property just to the north of me. So he and I have been there for 26 years. And like I said, it's been cornfields all the way around us the entire time, and I understand that urban development is going to happen, and we knew that was coming.
Okay, thank you, Cody.
Any other questions for Cody?
Thank you.
Was there anybody else in the audience that wanted to talk about item number 5?
Mr. Chair, if I could ask the staff if Diane could come back up for a second. I just want to be clear in my mind.
Diane, thank you.
Yes.
Under the new zoning ordinance, if we were to approve this as I-1, it's over.
Rezone, so it would go
yeah.
on to city council.
City council. Goes to
I'm
city
sorry,
council.
all zoning will go to city council?
Rezoning, yes.
Okay. So if it is approved as I-1, provided they meet the building standards, they could take out a building permit and do something, build whatever they wanted that fell under that classification under I-1.
Correct, after the approval through city council.
Under Shape Sioux Falls, the feeling is the 30-foot of buffer, some extra foliage, is an adequate buffer between single-family and...
Correct, with a berm
Industrial.
or a fence.
Okay, just want to be sure in my mind. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Diane, if you could maybe just clear up a couple of the other questions that he had brought forth regarding the, the institutional to the east, and I understand that we had some clarification on our end, but maybe just reiterate, and if you could answer those few questions that he had.
It is not institutional to the east. It is light industrial to the east. There was a mistake that we caught where we had noted that that property to the west was vacant. It is, in fact, residential, and it was updated and given out at the briefing yesterday for your use.
And
It is not annexed in the city, which is, I think, what the oversight was.
And the ground farther to the west is also industrial? Is that
Correct.
right?
On the other side of the interstate there is industrial.
And then, if I may, as far as the drainage concerns and all that, I mean, this would still be handled properly through the city with any construction of any building.
Yeah, they would still have to submit plans. The owner, the applicant would have to submit plans, and all of that is reviewed for drainage.
Thank you.
Diane, to add on to that, in regards to their water quality, being they're using their public wells, is there, he mentioned a study that was supposed to be done. Do we know, is that part of the city's requirements?
Not at this point, not for a rezone, it's not required.
Okay.
So no, we haven't heard anything on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Diane? Thank you. I would look for commission action.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the rezone.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Now I think it's time for some discussion.
I'm in support of the rezone due to the fact that, previously the buildings could have been unlimited in size and would have to go through the same process as in I-1 zoning would have to for drainage, et cetera. So I feel confident that this will be handled in every way needed to be to make sure to protect them.
Thank you, Andy. Other comments? Jesse, you look like you wanted to say something.
Certainly, once your view changes, obviously, things matter to you. And while it's very easy to be empathetic to the neighbors, the reality is, as Commissioner Dunlap said, that the land use is going to change and something is going to be built out there. I would agree with what Andy said, and the commercial size and scope of the development could be very significant, and I think an I-1 industrial zoning, light industrial, is an appropriate land use at that corner, as the land uses to the east indicate. I think we have seen growth in this area and in this neighborhood to this industrial rezoning, and again, as indicated by the petitioner, there is a need for that type of zoning in Sioux Falls. However, that doesn't drive our decision here. It strictly is a land use. Does this land use make sense? It does. It does make sense to rezone this from a commercial to a light industrial zoning, and therefore I'll be supporting the rezone.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm probably in a minority. I'd feel a lot better with this if the petitioner was coming to us with a specific project in mind that he could share with these folks and share with us as to what's going to go into that particular site. I think some of these folks might be going, light industrial can encompass an awful lot of different things, a lot of manufacturing. And I think there's probably, I think they know what they have, or maybe they didn't know what they have with the C4, not knowing what they might not get with this I-1, or excuse me, yeah, the I-1. I feel like making a motion. I'll make the motion that we defer this till we have something specific. Well, I probably wouldn't be a motion to do it.
We
like
already
that.
have a motion on the floor right now, which we need to
Be a substitute.
act on.
Yep.
Or you could
And the
make a,
developer and owner are good.
It'd
Yeah,
have to be a
it'd
substitute.
have to be a substitute motion.
Yep.
Well, that's how I kind of feel about it, but
I can appreciate that, Kenny, but our zoning ordinance as it stands does not require a disclosure. And really, they could be rezoning it, just as they rezoned it to C4. They had no tenant in mind at that time either. And they could build the land to spec, they could build the land for the petitioner that, or for the interested party that they have, and they could move, and it could be anything at that point. So I can appreciate wanting to know who the petitioner is, but it doesn't change the requirement of the zoning.
And, excuse me, Mr. Chair, this is called riding the fence, because I concur with Jesse on, yes, on the zoning and everything, but I'm very concerned with manufacturing, the type of manufacturing showed up. Commercial, you could end up with a commercial building. You're not going to have the manufacturing. Manufacturing is a process. What is being used in that process? I asked that question earlier about the land or the water quality, testing, because they have their own personal wells. That's my concern, is you got a manufacturing process. It requires some chemicals. There's a spill. That's different than on a commercial where you've got, warehousing and a Walmart being built, or a Costco or something like that being built on that property, where you're very less likely to have that kind of a spill. Like I said, that's my concern, my only concern of it. Like I said, I'm riding the fence on this one both ways. This is a tough one for me.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir, Mr. Pearson.
I'm going to echo kind of what he said just a moment ago, and I do like the idea that changing from C4 to I1, in a sense, is a step upward, because as he pointed out, Nick, there would be the potential under C4 to have, yes, another Walmart even out there. Now at least we've restricted it somewhat in size. I follow the same concerns of the fact that those people were living there first. Hindsight's always 20/20. Maybe 25 years ago they should have bought that property, but today is today, and we have to deal with what we have today. I'm not sure exactly how the City Council will respond to all this, but I'm going to vote for this with reservation, because I have a concern that was just expressed before me.
Thank you, sir.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, I've said this before at past meetings, I believe, about, as you indicated, Denny, the only way to really control what the use of a piece of land is to purchase it and own it. When it's adjacent piece of land, the realism of expecting it to stay a park forever is not realistic, unless the city were to buy it and said we're going to make it into a city park, which that isn't a possibility for this. It's already C4. I like the fact that Shape Sioux Falls defines a buffer zone, and I recognize that that blocks part of your view, but no matter what goes here, it will block part of the view. And I personally would prefer trees and some natural vegetation to the side of a building. That said, you know, it's difficult when you're trying to, you know, as we look at zoning, we always try to look at the way transitions should appropriately happen. And when we have industrial, or in this case institutional, whatever you might call it, there is a function that is in that I-1 that's farther to the east. This particular piece of property currently is a C4, is actually a decent transition between that more institutional function and the residential piece that's already existing. So there is some logic to me to have that as commercial. To switch it to industrial, kind of it degrades that transition ability. Now, let's keep in mind that I believe the petitioner can still do a mixed use kind of an approach, even if it was I-1, and say, let's reserve these farther west properties as commercial, because we feel that that's a better transition between what we would like to put in as industrial and these residential spaces, and they could actually use that for some commercial facilities that still fit into the I-1 designation. And so then the I-1 would actually make some sense, because it gives them some additional flexibility, but still allows them to do the conscientious thing and still allow that transition to happen between properties. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? We've had some pretty good discussion. I think we've gotten to hear some good arguments from both sides. And now it's time for commission action. We have a motion and a second for approval of item number 5. I'll ask you to say yes and also raise your hand. So at this point, all those in favor, please say yes and raise your hand.
Yes.
6 in favor. All those opposed, please say yes and raise your hand.
Yes.
Yes. 2 against. Motion passes. We will move on to item number 8.
Item 8 is a 2014-0407 initial development plan for the Lake Lorraine pedestrian-oriented mixed-use PUD located east of South Marion Road and north of West 32nd Street.
Thank you.
Jason Bieber, representing the planning staff. This is a request from Cindy Friesen for initial development plan approval for the Lake Lorraine pedestrian-oriented planned unit development. It is located east of South Marion Road and north of West 31st Street. The applicant is requesting approval of this initial development plan to begin construction on a proposed pedestrian-oriented mixed-use development. Pedestrian-oriented planned unit development allows construction of a mixed-use development of office, multifamily residential, and commercial uses upon approval of a final development plan through the planning office. The proposed plan indicates residential uses on the south and southwest corner of the development in the form of townhomes varying in size from 3 to 8 attached units. Office uses are indicated in the southwest corner of the property. A large 2-story office building is located adjacent overlooking Lake Lorraine, and 4 other additional office buildings located to the southwest ranging in size from 7,800 to 9,000 square feet. Commercial uses are indicated on the west, north, and east sides. 3 large box-style stores ranging in size from 60 to 150,000 square feet are located on the east side, adjacent to the Interstate 29. Various other multi-tenant retail stores ranging in size of 4,200 to 40,000 square feet are located on the north and the other 3 sides of the development. 2 restaurants are located on the west or east side of Lake Lorraine, and 2 hotels on the north side. Several common use recreation uses such as a pavilion, amphitheater, canoe and boat rental, parks and recreation trail are located in the interior of the site adjacent to the lake. Parking standards within a pedestrian-oriented PUD may utilize shared parking calculations. The submitted plan indicates large parking lots adjacent to the east of the proposed big box stores and along the north side of the site. The initial development plan is designed to allow customers to park in a specific location and then utilize the proposed sidewalks and walking trails to access the entire development. A large town center sign is proposed on the eastern portion of the site adjacent to I-29. Further, numerous additional freestanding signs are indicated on the east, north, and west portions of the development adjacent to the major streets. The submitted initial development plan provides the necessary land use transitions within and on the outside edges of the planned unit development. The pedestrian orientation is shown throughout the initial development plan and will be reviewed for consistency during the final development plan acceptance. Because the subject application for the Lake Lorraine initial development plan is consistent with the required standards of the pedestrian-oriented planned unit development, staff recommends approval of the request. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Jason, this is one of the new and exciting parts of the Shaped Places Ordinance, is this pedestrian-oriented planned unit development. So it's fun to see something like this coming.
Yep, it'll be a new thing that we go through, but I think it's kind of something that the old ordinance didn't address, and it'll make for some interesting developments in the future.
So and then the way these would work is there's an initial development plan where they kind of lay out what the plans are, and then you then come back to the Planning Commission or to staff for a final development plan when they're looking to move forward.
Once initial development plan is approved by the Planning Commission, then before construction they will submit a final development plan to the City Planning Office, and we will review it in-house to make sure it matches closely to the initial development plan. If it's within the criteria with a little differentiations, that's okay. And then once we review it and say it matches the initial development plan, then they can proceed with a building permit. If there's major differences and it doesn't meet the criteria, then they will have to come back to amend this initial development plan through the Planning Commission.
As rezones go to the City Council, do development plans go to the City Council, or does this end here?
Nope, your decision is final on the initial development plan. A lot of times they will be in conjunction with a rezone to a pedestrian-oriented PUD. However, this was already zoned to that.
Thank you. There were other questions, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, just curious, how deep is the lake? How many? 17 feet?
17 feet.
And what's the source of water? Is it a spring fed or? Yeah. Okay. Just one of those things I'd like to know.
You can't fish there unless you have permission.
Is it stocked?
I've tried, and yeah.
That's going to have to be part of the deal, fishing.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jason? Thank you. Is the applicant here? No.
Okay, so Steve said I had to do this. I'm not sure why. I think that's what we hired him for. But anyway, I told him I was going to say that. I'm Cindy Friesen-Mannen. I do have a last name for 32 years of Mannen, but that's all right. My entire family has owned this property for 30-some years. So it's been a really long road to get here. And obviously there's a lot of history, and staff did a really good job of that. We've actually been in a PD since about 1980-something, and had several renditions and different zoning. And in fact, we're halfway through, doing some rezoning. You've all seen us here before. We happened to make it through on the consent agenda. And then along came the passing of the vote, and so now we're under shape places. So you asked some really good questions. Not that I learned all that too just a couple of weeks ago. So yes, we're back here doing our initial development plan. And frankly, a pedestrian-oriented plan development unit is exactly what we have in mind and have had in mind, what we've been working on for the last 12 months. We really want to create a lifestyle center here. So, we want a place that people will live, shop, dine, work, play, and stay. I don't always remember that in the right order, but that's a little marketing slogan. We have had neighborhood meetings, just to give you a little bit more history. Back in December, before we started with any of the process that was in place then, we had a really nice neighborhood meeting. In December, we had about 70 people attend. Frankly, some of these people have been our neighbors through all of those other ideas and processes, and they even know us as kids because we grew up on Marion Road. So they were all very supportive. In fact, I think Steve and Mike were probably surprised. They were very excited to see something happen with this property, even though, like you said, some people just want the park in their backyard. We actually have very supportive adjacent property owners, I would say. And like I said, we went through the entire process. One thing that's remained consistent, and I do want to bring it up, is we've always envisioned a walking path around this lake. And in the past, it was maybe more privately held or not as open to the public. Obviously, with this concept, it's going to be available to the public, and that's really important to us. So we want to work on, and you actually get to see a rendition that's been through traffic study and an advantage of being partway through the process and then coming back to this one. So you see street alignment and things that have been worked out in some of the other processes. And one of the things we really tried to keep in mind is that connectivity to the bike path system that's already there. Skunk Creek, which is the source of the, that's the same aquifer. That, of course, is north, across 26th Street, but not too far away is where Skunk Creek is and the bike path is. So we're really going to work to try to have that connectivity and have the lake available. We don't have that defined yet, but to the neighborhood, to the public. So the other thing is the live well concept. We attended some of those meetings, and frankly, that speaks to us too. And we really think we can develop something that will work within that context. So with that, I'll shut up and you can ask me anything else, unless you can't fish. That's the only, yeah.
Thank you, Cindy.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
In an effort to entertain my commissioners over there, my curiosity, I'd love to know, Cindy, who you have slotted for these tenants, but I recognize that you cannot disclose that.
I was going to say, I think I signed something that said I could not do that. Sorry, Kenny, I can't tell you. Anything else?
Questions? Yes.
Cindy, thank goodness you're involved. If it's Mike or Steve, they're always fighting with the neighborhood, so we see that a lot.
Commissioner Pearson?
Chairman, do you envision a 5-year finish date? How long will it take to get this totally developed?
Right. By the way, it's 131 acres. The lake's about 31 acres, so that's 100 acres of land. We've always said that it's a 10-year project. But to be honest, we're having great initial response, so who knows? It could be faster.
Well, I'm excited about the prospect for that really getting going. So,
thank you.
I think there's a lot of people sitting up here and probably a lot of people watching that are pretty excited about what you guys have going there. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to talk about item 8? Look for commission action.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. For motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say yes.
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 Motion approved. We are adjourned.